exchange of fire before that. So we defended our security, we defended the people, the Russian people, who had been denied by Poroshenko and Zelensky, denied the right to use the Russian language in education, in media, in culture, in everything. If you check the Ukrainian legislation passed after the coup brought to power this neo-Nazist regime, they legally canceled everything what has to do with the Russian language. And when the people who did not accept the coup in the east of Ukraine and in Crimea said, guys, leave us alone, we are not going to follow your policies, they were declared terrorists. And it is the regime who started the war against these people. That's why the Minsk agreements were considered, the way to stop this. And it was not very difficult to implement the Minsk agreements. It was about the special status for a small part of the east of Ukraine, much smaller than the territory which is controlled by the Russian army now, much smaller. But they didn't want to do this because the special status to be given to this small territory included the right to use the Russian language. And this in itself was considered a taboo by the Nazists who took the power in Ukraine through a coup. Then there was the right to have some local police, which is nothing unusual, and then the right to be consulted when judges and prosecutors are appointed for this particular region. By the way, this is exactly, almost the same status as was promised to Kosovo Serbs in 2013, a year before, 2 years before the Minsk agreements. This community of Serbian municipalities of Kosovo. The same stuff and the same trick. Cheating on Serbia in case of a community of Serbian municipality of Kosovo, cheating on Russia in the case of the Minsk agreements. Special status for the Serbs in Kosovo, special status for Russians in Ukraine. In both cases, it was the European Union in the person of Germany and France, and also the High Representative regarding the Kosovo deal. And I am convinced that just like they admitted that they did not intend to implement the Minsk agreements, they never intended to implement the thing they promised to Serbs in Kosovo.
But the war,
I think I stop here.
This military campaign, or whatever you call it, a war or enduring freedom operation, whatever name you may choose to call it, the bombing campaigns do not alter hearts and minds. They're the worst way to do it. In fact, they freeze people into positions, make further negotiations even more difficult. So where does this take us?
Yeah. Tell me, when this conference started? What year?
This is the eighth Raisina Dialogue we're having.
8th year.
Eighth, yeah.
You started in 2014 or something?
Yeah,
Have you been interested during these years what is going on in Iraq, what is going on in Afghanistan? Have you been asking the United States and NATO whether they are certain of what they are doing? When they now Scholz, Baerbock, Macron and others say this is the first time when the OSCE Helsinki Final Act is being violated. They don't remember about 1999 when Serbia was bombed, when Joe Biden, being a senator at that time, he was bragging that 1 year before the bombing of Serbia, I promoted this approach. And I believe that we have to bomb them out into peace. When Iraq was ruined as a state, after Colin Powell showed a vial with some powder. And then a few years later, Tony Blair said, yes, it was a mistake. What to do?
No, but that is a lesson which needs to be learned.
Wait a second. If you believe that the United States has the right to declare a threat to its national interest any place on earth, like they did in Yugoslavia, in Iraq, in Libya, in Syria, 10,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean, and they have the right to do so, and you don't ask them any questions. And Russia, not just overnight, like they did in Iraq and elsewhere, but for more than 10 years, warning them, guys, you are doing something which is going to be very bad.
But I think the question has been asked.
One second. Not across the ocean, but just on our borders, on the territories where the Russians lived for centuries and centuries and centuries. So, if it is not a double standard, then I'm not a minister, you know.
The question has been asked, and the experience in Iraq, Afghanistan, everywhere has been that it does not make sense to get into these long, protracted wars to defend these kinds of interests. US did not succeed. Why do you think Russia will succeed?
Well, you being the head of such distinguished audience, I fail to understand why you don't understand. It is.
No, my simple question, Minister, is what is the end game?
It is the war against everything Russian in Ukraine. Can you imagine that for example, in Ireland, they cancel the English language, or in Belgium they cancel French, or in Switzerland they cancel German? Can you, or in Finland they cancel Swedish? Can you even imagine this? Of course not. But nobody lifted a finger, not the small one, not the middle one, when the Russian language was totally cancelled in Ukraine. We have been knocking on all these doors. OSCE, Council of Europe, guys, why don't you say something? Why don't you tell them to behave? And during all these 8 years, I don't recall that your conference was addressing this problem.
See, the question everyone asks here, and that's what comes from the other side is, the end to the war is simple. If Russia stops fighting, the war ends. And then perhaps...